to have fun, make some friends, have a good time, release some stress.
I am Tribal Gamer. It's something that started out so small and has grown into such a stamp on this earth, to be perfectly honest. The amphibian phenom.
So I said it out loud. I was kind of like, am I saying this correctly? 10 shots and 8 goals.
Oh my god.
This is the essence of gaming. It's not your normal podcast. We're talking about real shit. We're talking about how this invention changed our world. Let's go out there, make the world a better place, and treat each other with respect. Game on.
What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Halo 2, going back to Halo 2. I remember this was before Twitch. We would set up a video camera behind us, and we'd videotape our games, and then all of our no scope headshots with the sniper from across the way, we would post them up, and and that's how you became popular. Like now, it's a lot easier with these different platforms and Twitch and stuff like that, and it's all just out there, and so it's easier to get noticed, and it's easier to find a path to get involved, at least with esports.
Yeah,
and if you wanted to make a profession, it's not as shunned upon.
Well, it's easier, but it's also, but is it like it's easier to do it and to get your stuff out there, but there's also millions more people throwing their stuff out in the same spot now. It's kind of it is definitely easier to record it and stuff, but there's also way more people out there doing it and posting things, and you have to be better than a lot of other people now that are in the same space if you want to stand out too.
Let me ask you this, Froggy. You played soccer as a kid, right? And you actually were pretty good at it to where you were successful even in like high school and thereafter, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I also played soccer when I was a kid.
Okay.
But I was not good enough to play in high school or thereafter. So I think it's the same thing with all these other sports. These kids play them when they're young, and to become a professional, the ones that dedicate the most time, put in the most work, have that natural ability. So like a tall basketball player, right? Like there's some basketball players, like when you see them in college, they don't even know what to do with themselves because they've never played the game before. But then just their natural gift of being tall and athletic, they're able to be successful with the right type of mentorship and coaching. They learn the skills by dedicating that time, right? So I think you're right. It is across, I mean, the entire U.S. and there is a lot more competition than there used to be, but that's how it should be. I think. If it's going to be a sport, it should be available to everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I just meant in my opinion, there's more people that are higher level people at this point that are able to, because I feel like it's easier to access a lot of things, whether it's like Game Pass, you have access to hundreds of games or whatever, so I feel like there's people that are starting younger that are, again, might start at 10 years old on Twitch or whatever, or not Twitch. Maybe that's not allowed. Maybe that's not legal, but on YouTube, wherever you're able to start, however young you're able to start, and so you have all these people that are pretty good that are out there. But like you said, people who have the natural ability and people who put in the most work will be able to be seen just like any other sport. It'll be easier to find them, but there's just a lot more people you got to wade through if you're looking for those people too sometimes.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's a good thing, because then the
I think so.
True good ones should be noticed, and if they put in more time and are that more skilled, like they should have those opportunities, I think, to make money doing something that they love to do. And I mean, let's be real, like any baseball player that's getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, like they're living a nice life, and they're probably doing something that they love to do, right? Yep. I've never met a baseball player say, "Oh, I don't want to do this. I want to go be a pizza GM." at
Yeah.
a pizza shop. Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's a sport. It's a game. They're competitive. Like that's
Uh-huh.
they their mentality is for that, and that's why they're
Yep.
in
Mm-hmm.
it. All right, so that was the biggest moment in gaming history when this dude Diago, what was his name? Diago came back, no
Yeah.
life, blocked everything tossed at him, came back and won. It was monumental, and we discussed about needing that kind of moment. So we kind of talked about the definition of what sport means, but there's a lot of criticism out there because like right now with that instance right there, we could easily say that gaming is a sport. Esports is an actual sport. People are getting paid to do it. Like there's a lot of money that is involved with it, and we're going to get to that stuff here soon, but it's a competitive thing. Like we've talked about the fatigue factor, so like there's got to be some stamina involved. Maybe not the most athletic sport out there, but I mean neither is baseball, right? But there was a comment that the president of ESPN, at the time his name was John Skipper, that kind of ruffled a lot of feathers, and he said that esports is not a sport. And he came out live public on ESPN and said, we're not going to cover it because playing video games competitively is not a sport. Okay. So that's going to be our question of the week. So after you're done listening to this, go to the interactive part, answer our question of the week. Is esports considered a sport in your eyes? But we want to hear from you guys. Do you think esports is considered a sport? The guy from ESPN, a few years back does not. I bet if you ask them, right, they might change their tune a little bit. I mean, I think they even cover wrestling, right? Like
Yeah,
WWE
I
wrestling.
believe so.
Okay, I mean, is
But
that a
I'm
true
not.
sport?
I mean, I guess it's entertainment. If that's
It
for
is
some people,
entertainment.
but like,
But all sports are entertainment, as we read in the definition
Yeah.
earlier. I'm gonna reread that definition so we can think about it again. An activity involving physical exertion and skill in which an individual or team competes against another or others for entertainment. And like the only thing I'd say that I would have an issue with esports being a sport would be the physical exertion. And it's I mean that one's so hard because in MLB there's not a lot of physical exertion. In cricket there's not a lot of physical exertion. In NASCAR driving there's not a lot of physical exertion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in some of these high level, like I was saying, it's like high speed chess. Some of these guys are sweating up a storm by the end of these fights.
Right.
They're hitting those buttons like crazy, and I mean, so I'd say there's exertion, but it just again, it just kind of depends on where your viewpoint is on it and kind of what you think it is, because you can I can see where people could see it kind of both ways, but and then again, what definition are you using? Are you using the esports definition or the sport definition? Because they're kind of the same and kind of different, but there are two different words too. So it's like there's esports, which have its own definition, and there's sports, or what do we? Yeah, was it sport? Is that the other one? And it has a definition.
Yes.
So but they're very similar to their definitions. Are pretty similar, but it's, I think you could. It's hard for me because I could make an argument either way, but I feel like I would say today I would consider it a sport. I think 10, 15 years ago I probably wouldn't have.
So what if I told you it would depend on what country you're from?
Well, I mean, aren't certain countries, don't they define things differently too? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, so let's go into what countries have actually classified it as a sport.
Oh, okay, is that on here still somewhere?
It should be down right here. Yep. All right, so Russia was the first country to classify cybersport as an official sport discipline on July 25th, 2001. So July 25th, 2001, it is officially classified as a sport by a country. And that's important. Okay. In 2003, China recognized as a real sport. Okay. And then in 2019, China is the first to make an official profession of being an esports athlete. So it was considered a sport in 2003. Well, technically 2001, but it actually became a profession in 2019 in China. And I guess more than 100,000 people in 2019 registered themselves as professional gamers under this ministry, stating that they anticipate over 2 million such people in this profession in 5 years.
Makes
So I
sense.
wonder where they're at now. This obviously hasn't been updated, but
Yeah.
it'll probably be updated soon, hopefully. But 2 million by basically this year. So like in China, you have to announce what your profession is because it is not a democracy. So
Yeah.
they are a communist country, so they declare what their profession is, and they're anticipating about 2 million this year are going to be professional gamers. That's crazy. That's a lot. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then if we scroll down, 2013, the Canadians, the friends to the north, League of Legends player Danny Shifter Lee became the first pro gamer to receive an American P1AA visa, a category designated for internationally recognized athletes. In 2014, Turkey's Ministry of Youth and Sports started issuing esports licenses to players certified as professionals. In 2016, the French government started working on a project to regulate and recognize esports. The Games and Amusements Board of the Philippines started issuing athletic licenses to Filipino esports players who are vouched for by a professional esports team in July 2017. The countries, the governments of these countries are now seeing the evolution, and yes, I think you're right, Froggy. What they're seeing is the dollar signs, the taxable dollar signs, right? Because like what these visas are is basically like, hey, you're gonna make money in this other country, but you're still gonna owe us taxes, so you have to report all the money you make. And so like they're basically, you are 100% correct. They're looking at the dollar signs. They see that there is an opportunity here to make money, and that this is going to be a staple in society and in our culture, and there's going to be a future in this business, basically. I mean, that's what I'm kind of getting from it. I mean,
Yeah.
This many countries are getting involved in allowing these things to happen. Like we said before, in the past, you had to pay for your own room and board, and you were probably paying for a vacation to, Canada to go play in this tournament. I mean, now, the opportunities are much easier and a lot more available. There's a lot more companies involved in wanting to sponsor people. And when you have, a mass amount of companies wanting to spend money on sponsorships and stuff like that, well, of course the government's going to get involved with that. And I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. What I'm saying is this is kind of the moment where in the world it changes, and it's being considered as a true sport, whether everybody agrees with it or not. The way it's built up, it is like a sport, just like baseball, just like football, just like hockey, just like soccer, and you're starting to see an acceptance of it, I think, and not just from governments, but from people in general. Like they're having record turnouts for these leagues and these tournaments and these competitions, and we'll kind of talk about it here in a little bit, but yeah, so let's talk about other competitions with traditional sports. When we talk about like sports, and we go back to like the Greece times and the Roman times and the Grecian Olympics, like they had sports, what they called sports, and it was different things. Some of those things were like the gladiators in the arena. Some of those things were, how long they could throw a spear or a big rock for shot put. Like a lot of the track events we have now were, have evolved from previous Olympic sports. They call them Olympic sports. Okay. And that's what we're kind of talking about is the Olympic Games recognition. So E-Games has basically been recognized by the Olympic Committee. And in 2017, they basically had on the table if they were going to consider, well, they were considering having esports as an Olympic event. And Frog, when was the last time you watched the Olympics?
Whenever the last one was, I didn't watch a lot, but I did watch some of the last one.
Okay.
I watched them more during the once the hockey was allowed for the professional players, but I do watch a little bit of things here and there. I don't watch it as much as I did when I was younger. It's just not quite the same, but I definitely watch
We
it
got
when
a lot of weird
professional
stuff now.
sports are. Yeah. Yeah,
Like-
there's
like
some different
The
things they've been
ribbon
adding lately.
dancing. Have you seen the
Yeah,
ribbon dancing?
yeah, that's not something I saw in there before until recently.
I mean, it looks
I think
neat,
there's a
but
couple other weird things. I'm trying to think of what the other ones were this last Olympics. There were a couple things that I was surprised about.
well, they took out wrestling.
Oh yeah,
and I
yeah.
think they took out baseball.
Yeah, that was
It-
weird.
And they have ribbon dancing, and they have, I think, break dancing is coming.
Oh, is that?
the
remember
next
hearing they were
Summer
thinking about
Olympics?
that.
I
Yeah,
think break dancing is one of them. Like,
crazy.
what are we calling sports now? And like,
Yeah.
and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm sure ribbon dancing is very difficult, and for them to make it look as beautiful and elegant as they do, like it takes a lot of dedication and skill. So I'm not knocking that. If they're going to allow ribbon dancing, shouldn't they allow esports?
I mean, you'd think so.
I, I would think so. I mean, even if it's only like certain games, like maybe not have NBA 2K or FIFA or MLB or whatever. If there's already an Olympic sport that is that sport, I would understand that. But like,
Yeah.
what about Counter-Strike or StarCraft or Warcraft or
Yeah.
there's more like strategy type games. I mean, they have fencing as a sport, and they have
Yeah.
I think chess is even an Olympic
Is it
sport.
now? Okay.
I think so, or maybe it's in the same boat as esports where they're debating it.
Yeah.
But I know it was on the ballot, and I know that they did not pass it for this next Summer Olympics, which I mean, I'm not gonna, have a tear drop down my eye, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know, when do we get to the point where it's accepted enough to where it can be included in events like that, or where there is like an ultimate championship, like a Super Bowl, where it is televised on ABC or NBC or some of the local stations, and is known as like an actual sport, and it gets the attention that I frankly think it deserves. Because I know there are so many people out there. Like, I bet if we ask Twitch this question, how many people do you have on your platform on a daily basis of people just watching people play video games? I bet
Oh, it's a lot.
it's more than what NFL gets on Sundays.
Yeah.
He
That's a
gets
lot of people.
on a gamely basis. I bet you it's more than what NHL gets on a gamely basis. And that just tells you there's a lot of people interested in this sport, even if it is as a spectator. How many people go to a baseball game that could not play baseball? They're
Probably
just a
most of them.
spectator. All of them, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's what, maybe 30 people in that whole place that are going to be on the field playing.
Yeah.
right? And
Uh-huh.
so, it is becoming a spectator sport. They've allowed, like, the game developers are building their games that allow spectator spots where you can
Mhm.
watch it. You can watch the game unfold. You're not in it, but you get to watch it. Why would they do that if there wasn't a calling for it?
Yeah.
And I think there is. I mean, how many people watch you on your stream, watch us play NHL?
Yeah,
A lot.
it's usually when the bigger crowds pop up.
Right. And so I don't know. It kind of saddens me a little bit that they did not allow it into the Olympics. I really, really thought it was gonna get in there.
Yeah.
All right, so actually the next subject we were going to talk about is actually the evolution of competitive gaming. So that's a great segue, talking about spectator mode. And so that was something that they brought in because people were interested in watching these great matchups.
Uh-huh.
They've also expanded the online gaming aspect. Like, so back in the day, you had to create a lobby and everybody had to like find a room. And then if you didn't like somebody, you could kick them out and you had to wait and find somebody else to hop in. Nowadays, they have matchmaking, so it automatically sets you up. They also have leaderboards, so you can see your ranking against other people around the world. They also have these point systems that level you up and give you prestige. In NHL, they give you basically a level of gold 1, 2, 3, platinum 1, 2, 3, and everybody's trying to get to elite. So they're constantly bringing in more and more and more competitive reinforcement, like
Mm-hmm.
things to
Yeah.
almost like cause you or force you, if you want to be on the leaderboards at the top, to continue playing and continue playing and unlocking and playing and unlocking. And I know, in my opinion, sometimes that's a bad thing for the games, I think, where, the skill is based off of how high of a level your character is, right?
Yeah.
Or what guns you have unlocked for like Call of Duty fans or
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Yeah.
To me, like that takes away a lot of the competitiveness, because if you're not somebody that can dedicate that much time and then you just get owned
Yeah.
because everybody else has the next greatest thing, you're not
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to be interested in playing that game very, very
Yeah.
much. But I mean, those are kind of like some of the things that game developers are bringing in to kind of reinforce the esports world and the competitive and like league style, tournament style ranking system that allows us to want to be the best and bring in, more importantly, the most money. And so you start to see a lot of leagues and what they call challenger series and different tournaments and stuff like that start to pop up. So if Froggy, you can scroll down a little bit. Promotion and regulation leagues. Okay. So we're talking about like different leagues and competitions and stuff like that. So the reason that there's so much money involved with esports is because all these different companies, and usually they're tech companies like uh, uh, peripherals such as like game controllers or chairs or systems or like different accessories, whatever. Like a lot of these companies are sponsoring these players because they know they're going to be seen by hundreds of thousands of people. And so we listened to a podcast that had the one of the guys from Razer, who is a peripheral company. They build like mouses and keyboards and stuff for gaming, and he was kind of like talking about like the amount of money and the amount of time they put into building a mouse and the type of technology and how expensive the technology that goes into it and why it's so much better than like a normal mouse. And it's same thing with like controllers, headsets, all of that stuff. But we have startup companies like this that got in right at the right time. This started becoming a huge boom, and now, there's a space in this economy where it's getting filled in by a lot of these big tech companies that are making these new things. A lot of them are failing, but some of them are becoming very, very successful. So right now it's kind of like the gold rush. And if you've ever heard of 49ers, like the gold rush, it was a big risk hoping to go find gold in California, right? But everybody just started flowing there, right? That's where everybody was going. I heard there's lots of gold. A lot of people didn't make it, they made it out there, but they didn't make it rich like they thought they were going to. But there were some people that made it very rich. Like they found a big deposit of gold and became very wealthy because of it and started a great life because of it. That's kind of where we're at with esports and all these companies sponsoring people and stuff like that. It's kind of feast or famine. And I can imagine it's kind of like the NIL with these college students in football. Like a lot of people are putting a lot of money out there and they're realizing the investment isn't as valuable as they thought it was going to be. But there are still leagues and different groups that actually prevailing very well. So have you ever heard of like the company Phase?
Yeah.
Very predominant company. Basically, Phase is a company that kind of sponsors, but not really sponsors gamers. So they recruit and they are kind of like a team, and this team basically gets sponsors to sponsor them. They're professionals that you have to go through a regiment of qualifications and stuff to be on with them, and you have to follow their rules and do what they want you to do when it comes to what you're playing with and all of that stuff. But like that's like they were so big and so popular, they actually have they are public on the stock exchange. Did you know that?
Realize that they were. No, I didn't realize they were public. Wow.
Yes, they are public. Now, I think in the first year of them becoming public, their stock went down 80%.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a feast or famine type of business. And I think eventually it'll kind of stable out when the big dogs finally rise to the top. You're going to have the main sponsors of esports, but right now there's just so much coming in, which is a good thing because they're able to do these really extravagant tournaments and these really extravagant championships and stuff like that, where it's getting noticed by the news, it's getting noticed by the everyday gamer. People are getting intrigued by it, and it's very like flashy and exuberant and just very cool to see. If the kids still use that word cool. But it was just it's really cool to watch and see and be a part of now. Like when the kids go back to school and they tell their friends they were at the championship of League of Legends, they're not going to be looked at like a nerd anymore. They're going to be looked like man, I wish I was there. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So while rising interest and viewership of esports, some companies sought to create leagues that followed the franchise approach used in the North American professional sports, in which all teams backed by a major financial sponsor to support the franchise participate in a regular season of matches to vie for the top. So kind of what we were just talking about. Standing as to participate in the postseason games. This approach is more attractive for larger investors who would be more willing to back a team that remains playing in the Esports Premier League and not be relegated to a lower standing. Though the details vary from league to league, these leagues generally require all signed players to have a minimum salary, so they're getting paid, with appropriate benefits, and may share in the team's winnings. While there is no team promotion or regulation, players can be signed onto contracts, traded among teams, or let go as free agents, and new players may be pulled from esports equivalent minor leagues. Okay, so now there's an actual structure with some of these leagues of how people are going to be ranked. Where's the value for each player? what is your money getting for you? So if you're not happy with a certain player's performance, you can say,
Drop
nope, I
them.
want somebody better. And yeah, you can drop
Yep.
them, you can trade them, you can
Grab someone
you,
else.
the sponsors. So when we say sponsors, we're kind of talking team owners, right? The
Yeah.
equivalent of baseball team owners, and that's what a team owner is. They're the one that fronts the money, and hopefully they make money, right? And that's what a sponsor is. So you're starting to see that this solidification of being more of a sport. It's not just a tournament once a year. It's a months long endeavor. People are getting paid. There are certain rules and regulations that have to be followed. Performance is expected, and if it's not expected, there are punishments for it. To me, this is all great news. Like, this is what we, if you're a fan of esports, this is what you want to start to see happen, and it starts just kind of getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So a lot of these leagues deal with certain games, right? So we talked about League of Legends, like they have what's called the Challenger Series, and that's like, I believe, like a 3-month long season, and they fly all the players to the same city, and they play each other pretty much every day. They have their days off, just like sports athletes and stuff, but they play consistently. They play a whole season. There's rankings, then there's a playoff, and then there's an ultimate champion. Overwatch. There's an Overwatch league. Overwatch was actually made. It's one of the first games made that started out with a league. So they created the game with the league, keeping in mind that this is going to be a professional game and a competitive game that we are going to turn into basically a sport. And they created the league first, and then they created the game, basically. And so you're starting to see games are being made for just this money making professional atmosphere. NBA 2K League. I mean, you were talking about that earlier, Froggy, if you want to elaborate a little bit more on that one.
Yeah, I just remember when it was first kind of coming out. It was like, this was in 2018. Like I had a chance to try out for it, and I had kind of started, and I got pretty far through the process, and then my internet just wasn't good enough where I lived to kind of continue with it. But it was pretty interesting. Like they fly you out. At least back then, they flew you out to, I think it was whatever team you made it on, you'd get flown out to that spot, and then from there you would fly to your team would fly to the different NBA arenas of the teams you were playing when it was an away game, and you actually go to the arena and play at the arena with this setup they had. Every NBA team that had an esports team had this setup and everything. You had like jerseys they made for you while you were playing, and like it was crazy. And it was like 3 or 4 months long, and you got a salary and all this stuff. Like it was pretty crazy, and it's only gotten bigger and bigger from that point on. It's pretty big now. I'm not sure how many leagues they have now, but in 2018 it was 17 teams, and was expanded to 25 when this article was written, but I believe it's more now. And it's pretty crazy. They have it like on ESPN. They air the games, and it's it's a big deal because the NBA teams actually own and run the esports leagues as well, which is kind of a unique aspect of it.
And I heard or I read that a lot of the other sports are kind of sponsoring esports teams for their team. I know we're going to bring up here in a little bit. I think it was the San Jose Sharks just recruited 5 players for their NHL EA Sports hockey team.
Yeah, do you want to pull that up?
I know. Here? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, real quick, just so they can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, right here. San Jose Sharks Gaming signs NHL 24 Pro Esports team. Man, I can't. Resto, McNips, Readers, Hedman, Boogie, and Dimitri, 91. And I'm sure we've played against these guys. Like some of them actually kind of sound familiar.
Yeah, to say that this guy sounds familiar. I think one of these guys. I think this guy might be a YouTuber too, or streamer or something. I know.
Dimitri, I think I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how far along the NHL, the whole NHL league is because I don't think it's pretty new, isn't it? Like I don't think it's like gotten
It is really
started yet,
new.
is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think I heard that next
Yeah, it doesn't
NHL is
say.
being made with the league in mind, which means they're going to have a lot more things to be a pro or to like online pro, which would be good for us, but also will work really well for like esports stuff. I read something about that a while back, but I wasn't sure if it was accurate or not, so I didn't really know if it was real. But seeing this, it looks like it probably is if they've just signed some players to
Yeah.
their team.
Well, it looks like they took second place in the Washington Capitals operated Caps Gaming Showcase in 23.
23. Okay.
So they took second place, and San Jose is like, well, we need a team, and probably just picked them up, it looks like.
Yeah.
Well, all right, Froggy, you know what we need to be practicing for, buddy. If they're starting this league, man. Well, and we'll talk here in a little
Get
bit.
get Hippie involved.
I
Maybe
did
we'll have a
some
chance.
research, man, on how to get involved in esports and
Yeah.
get with the right people and stuff. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But let's go back to some of these different leagues. There's also a FIFA league, Call of Duty, Counter Strike. Counter Strike, that's an old game, and it's
Yeah,
still
it is.
being played
I got
professionally.
I was just say I actually got pretty far in FIFA years back as well. I actually got to where my team was, it was like the Chell mode where you play as just your player, and my team had become the top North American team, and so they wouldn't allow us to play North American teams because we destroyed them. So they only paired us with like European teams and other people overseas because they
Oh.
were the only ones we've had a fair matchup with, even though the lag was pretty bad. But it's like we would play a North American team and we'd beat them, mercy roll them, whatever, really quickly. They would leave, get mad. You know, I don't think there's a real mercy roll, but after a certain amount of goals, they would just leave. So that's kind of what happened every game. So like bumped us up to the top North American team, and then we just only got matched with European teams after that. It was pretty funny. Lasted for about
Oh, wow.
6 months or something, and then it kind of all people just kind of left and we kind of went our own way. But it was pretty funny how they
Dissolved, yeah.
wouldn't let us play North American teams for a while because it wasn't a fair matchup. So it just kind of bumped us over there. I didn't even know they did that at the time. It was like, old, like it was, I don't know, it was like back a long time ago. It was like on the computer that I played it on, but it was kind of funny.
Well, I'm just reading here about Counter Strike. I guess it looks like this was the first such esports league to be owned by the teams rather than any single organization.
Oh, Counter Strike was?
Flashpoint.
Oh, okay.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and other complications, Flashpoint would be discontinued by 2022. Okay. So like I said, it's feast or famine. Some of them do really well. Some of them kind of die off. And then you have these World Cups like Fortnite, like all these online games where they have the leaderboards and tournaments and stuff like that are now being held online. But still, mostly these leagues, these tournaments, these championships are still sponsored by a big company or corporation, which obviously that's what they need. Oh, here's some good information. Here, stop right here. The average compensation for professional esports players does not compare to those of the top classical sports organizations in the world, obviously. According to Julian Krinsky Camps and Programs website, the top esports player in the world earned around 2.5 million in 2017. Hey, I would still take that.
Yeah, really.
And that's still more than, a lot of rookies in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
The highest overall salary by any esports professional at the time was around 3.6 million. Wow.
Jeez.
While prizes for esports competitions can be very large, the limited number of competitions and large number of competitors ultimately lowers the amount of money one man can make in the industry. In the United States, esports competitions have prizes that can reach $200,000 for a single victory. Dota 2 International hosted a competition where the grand prize winning team walked home with almost $10.9 million.
Jeez.
Wow.
Man.
And, the first tournament, they gave a year subscription to Rolling Stone.
Yeah, I know.
So we're starting to actually see some major leagues out there. So there's World Cyber Games. There's Fortnite World Cup. There's MLG. You've heard of MLG, yeah? World
I think so, yeah.
Esports Games. So those are the big boys right now in esports. Like those are the ones that are the biggest sponsors of these tournaments and whatnot. MLG, I know, has gained a lot of momentum. I think even now, some of these are going to start deteriorating, going away. Again, we're still kind of in the early phases of this being a sport and being uh so popular that, I mean, at some point somebody's going to make the big move and is going to be the top dog. Just like we have the NFL, right? There's
Yeah.
still, the UFL out there, and there was the XFL. There was always these smaller competitors. Or talk about wrestling.
Canadian
Like you have the
Football League.
WWE, or you got these other competitors like AEW and TNA and stuff like that. Like you'll always have the lower ones trying to get the big dog, but one of these, and if I were to put money on it, I'm going to say it's MLG because I've seen the most momentum with them. There's going to be a big dog, and it's going to be where all the professionals want to go, and they're going to have a hierarchy of how you go through to get to that top spot, right? Like there's going to be regulation at some point. Okay, let's talk about colleges and scholarships and college teams. So we talked about kind of these pro teams getting players for them. Did you know that universities are also giving out scholarships for esports, as well as having programs that teach how to be a professional gamer?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy thinking about where it
Like,
was at 10 years ago even.
I wish I would have known. Like, I swear I was born in the wrong generation, man. Because
Yeah.
I would have been a master
Yeah.
at whatever gaming program that they had, whatever school. I would have gotten to Harvard if they had a gaming one. I promise
Yeah.
you. And I mean, it's kind of a testament of how far we've come, and the social acceptability of gaming and where it's at, and how it's evolved into what it is today. It is truly a staple in society, and I don't even think it's talked about enough. Anytime you hear about video games, it's either because of negative reasons, because of violence or
Yeah.
drug use or whatever. It's always negative. Or it's about tips or tricks or how to beat something or the newest game coming out, right?
Yeah.
But we don't talk about like what it's really done, like the impact it's had on our world. Like this is literally a $1.1 million business now. $1.1 billion business.
Yeah. It's crazy.
What's 1% of $1 billion, Froggy? We did it once, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I don't think it was 12 a.m. after 10 hours of streaming, though.
I know, right? I just know it was a good sum of money. If we got 1% of that, we would be happy.
Yeah.
And so you're starting to see acceptability. You're starting to see universities accept it. You're starting to see people being pushed to go towards this as a career. And I'm not saying you should be pushing all your kids to become professional gamers. I'm just saying it's being accepted more often. If you got a kid that can't hit a baseball at the age of 16, you're not going to push him to be an MLB baseball player, right? Like that's not going to be his forte. You can still play baseball, still have fun, but that's not where you're going to invest your time and money into little Johnny, right? But let's kind of talk about some of the concerns with esports and this being a profession, because we've talked a lot about the goods and how it's transformed it and evolved into this good professional business. But there are a lot of concerns that a lot of people have, including governments and different belief systems, stuff like that. So some of the concerns that we're going to bring up is health issues. So let's talk about health issues. So obviously you're not running a mile to make sure you're good at playing video games. So one of the biggest complaints the Olympics Games Committee had was it does not promote a healthy way of living. And that's why they did not want to put it in the Olympics. And so the gaming industry has to start thinking how to promote themselves to where it is beneficial for you to play these games. And that, I think that is going to be their biggest obstacle. There are a lot of benefits of playing games, but one of them is not athletic.
Yeah.
You're not going to be in good shape when it comes to trying to, better your health and stuff by playing video games.
Yeah.
But that does not mean the message that they give off and the, structure that they put in their own life can't have that message.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, like, how do they prepare? Are they on a regimen? Do they eat healthy? And if they're advertising, Doritos and Mountain Dew because that's their sponsor and that's all they're eating, of course we're not going to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe go get an almond milk ad or sponsor,
Yeah.
let's go get some Triscuit sponsors or some, Nutella or, some healthy food. Maybe that's what they need to start doing. Look for those types of companies to sponsor them. They're also worried about ethical issues. We talked in our last episode about the negatives or a lot of the blames people have put on video games for violence and some of the actions people have taken because of quote unquote video games. Ethical issues. Well, I would agree with this one 100%. It should be a concern, and we've heard it and seen it firsthand just playing Shell or NHL online. I mean, that's a toxic place. And there is no accountability, and it's really, really hard to avoid that. And until human beings get their shit figured out, that's going to be something I think that they continuously deal with when it comes to online gaming. But if we're talking about esports as a profession, there has to be some professionalism with that. And I think that's with any business that you're in. The ones that have temper tantrums are not the ones that get promoted. The ones that, start cussing up a storm or get pissed off because something goes wrong in the store, they're not the ones getting promoted. They're not showing that professionalism or that leadership. And that, I think is an easy fix when it comes to these games. When they do interviews afterwards, like, are they acting a fool or are they, sending a good message? And it doesn't need to be like, take your vitamins, kids. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. But like, are you slandering the guy you just beat, or are you, showing him respect? And we know how far, showing respect can go. And if you hold professionals to that standard, then you shouldn't have that problem of ethical issues. Whether they follow those standards or not, that's their problem. As long as you hold them accountable because of the organization they are a part of, that is what solves that problem. This next one cracks me up. Performance enhancing drugs. Okay, so baseball, you got steroids, probably in football too. Yes, steroids. What do you think is the big performing enhancing
Adderall?
drug? Ding,
Is it? I figured it was something like that.
100%. The ones that allow them to stay up and focus better and whatnot. And it's not that they're taking it, it's that they're probably abusing it. They're not taking it for the right reasons. They're probably abusing it. And that's always going to be an issue. I mean, I remember back in the day before you could get Adderall very easily, like the performing enhancing drug was Mountain Dew. I'd drink a 12-pack of Mountain Dew a night just playing
Uh-huh.
Halo. I'm
Yeah.
not even joking, man. And
Uh-huh.
so, that was, and there's some nasty stuff in Mountain Dew. If you look at the ingredients, there's
Oh
there's
yeah.
some like brake fluid and antifreeze in there. There's some
Yeah, it's
weird
weird.
shit in there. But yeah, that was our performance enhancing drug back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, Adderall, and then just a lot of kids are taking antidepressants because they are depressed, and a lot of it's to do with they don't have a healthy social life. They
Yeah.
don't do anything else other than game, and they're supplementing the game as their crutch or their vice.
Mm-hmm.
And that definitely does cause issues.
Yeah.
And that goes further into like mental issues and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Another issue that they're talking about is player exploitation. And this concern was very real, and I think we're starting to see a lot of changes with this, where we're seeing players getting paid salary now, right?
Uh-huh.
And we're seeing large sums of money won at these tournaments, but they are worried about these companies taking advantage of these kids that don't necessarily know the financial aspects of a business. And
Mm-hmm.
also, like, how are they being taken care of? Like, some of these kids are 16 years old
Yeah.
and are playing in these tournaments. Are like, how are they being cared for? It's got to be similar to like a young teen in a movie like Macaulay Culkin or something like that, where
Uh-huh.
you're kind of tossed in a lot of this money real fast, and it is very easy to be taken advantage of, because that's the first time you've ever seen that amount of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, you think it's a lot, but is it truly what you should be awarded, or what your value truly is?
Yeah.
um the economics of the thing, and we've already touched on this a few times in the podcast, but um right now it's a 1.1 billion-dollar business, but there's a lot of businesses under that 1.1 billion dollars that have failed.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a dog eat dog business. It's also a feast and famine business. The ones that are doing well are doing really well. The ones that are struggling really, really hard. And they're slowly going to continuously die off. And that does have effects to a lot of people. There's a lot of human beings involved with these businesses. There's a lot of families involved with these businesses. And it's a risk. It's like panning for gold in California when you live in Oklahoma. It's a risk,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just hoping that your company rises to the top. Obviously, gambling, uh, just like with
Yeah.
any sport, gambling
Any
is an
sport,
issue,
yeah,
right? And that they're worried about. I mean, I think in baseball that Pittsburgh Pirates player was banned for life, the second player since Pete Rose, because he was gambling on
Oh
his own
yeah.
games.
Uh-huh.
I just read that the other day. Like, well, I mean, that's how you deter it. Like, don't allow them
Yeah.
to gamble, and they
Yep.
can't gamble on it. And honestly, like, I don't know if I would ever gamble on a video game championship or anything like that. I mean, you don't know enough about the players, or at least I
Yeah.
don't. And also, I just, as often as I complain about how glitchy games are,
Yeah.
I just I
Never
wouldn't
know what could
trust it.
happen.
Yeah, exactly. And if I were to lose my money because of a stupid glitch, you know,
Yeah.
I'd be very, very, very upset. But I'm not much of a gambler, anyways. I don't really like to gamble that much, anyways. But and then the last thing is game cancellations, and what they're talking about is right now all these tournaments and stuff are, you know, only there, these leagues are only there as long as the game is working, and
Yeah.
that there is a server that is working for it. And so there are some games that are out for a little while, but then they run out of money and they have to shut down the server, and it's game over. And there's no more tournaments, there's no more league, there's nothing left for that game. You're gonna have to go do something else. and
Mm-hmm.
and that's a big concern, because I mean, how many games have been released that, you know didn't do too well or just didn't have the following? How many games did they say was going to be released in a year, and then 10 years later it's finally coming out because they had so many problems with it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Or it finally
so-
gets canceled or whatever.
yeah, or just, they're forced to turn it off, and then all these people have so much invested. I mean, I know,
Yeah.
was it Final Fantasy 11, the
Mhm.
online one, where
The first online one, yeah.
people had built, players that they would sell to other people to play with,
Yeah.
because they had the time to build up their levels and stuff like that. And like, once that server was down, like all of that work and stuff was gone. All of it.
Mhm.
All of
Yep.
it.
Yep.
And I mean, that can be, frustrating. But the beauty of the gaming business is there's always a new one right around the
Yep.
corner, right? There's always
Uh-huh.
the new big game coming out, and so they're always coming out with new stuff. So that to me isn't that big of a concern.
Mhm.
All right, so let's talk real quick about kind of the societal trends of esports and how that has changed over the years. So back in the day, you never saw, news reports on video games other than, the negative stuff,
Negative, yeah.
violence and stuff like that. But now you're starting to see, winners of these tournaments are being interviewed on the morning shows, and when
Yeah.
they have a World Cup champion, they actually have like a 30-second little clip of who it is and the atmosphere, and you can kind of see how things are going with it. So like the media coverage has definitely been a lot more forgiving and a lot more beneficial and not so much one-sided. And with platforms like Twitch and even like Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, like you're seeing a lot.
YouTube.
Yeah, a lot, well, especially YouTube. Like, I mean, that's the tips and tricks thing nowadays, right? Like,
Yeah.
we used to have a magazine, but nowadays you go to YouTube to figure something out.
Yep.
And it's beneficial, and you get to see different things about games that you would have never learned if it
Yeah.
wasn't for, that kind of help out there. So the popularity has grown so much that these platforms have made literally a whole world of media for just video games now. And so the access is definitely there tenfold compared to what it used to be even 20 years ago. So the popularity's there. We have pro teams, and we talked about this earlier, where they are sponsoring actual esports teams, and they're doing it for the media coverage, right? Like,
Yep.
they want to be part of this big growing business, and so they're saying, hey, we got our esports team and our real sports team. We pay them to play for us, and they're part
Uh-huh.
of the team, which is really cool. It's telling
Yeah.
you a great direction that we're getting into. And so now we have what you call professional gamers that get paid to play.
Mm-hmm.
So you might be asking, Froggy, how do you join a esports team?
Yeah. How do we?
All right, so I did some investigating, and I was like, there's got to be like some application I can fill out. How many years have I played video games? My whole life. What
Yeah.
games do I like? Whatever. There's really no application out there.
Mm-hmm.
This is a know who's who and be noticed type of
Mm-hmm.
things. So most of the Reddits and the articles I was looking at is get on the leaderboards, get high on the leaderboards, play a lot, gotta play a lot, be respectful to everybody you play with.
Mm-hmm. Never
And
know
when
who's who, I guess.
exactly, you never know who's in your stream, right, Froggy?
Yep.
And so you want to constantly be the example of somebody they would want on their team, and that includes your performance in the game, that includes your personality, that includes your attitude, that includes your respect. And somebody will notice you, and if they notice you, they'll reach out and they'll say, hey, part of this league, we pay our players this amount. We would like you to join our team. Can we have an audition with you and see how well you do so everybody can play with you? That seems to be the consistent answer that I've been getting. So just, be a great human being, be a great player, and then get noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. So, I mean, it kind of seems like it's like a Skull and Bones type of club or a Freemasons type of club. You got to know somebody to get in, which, okay, but let's be real. If you're that good, you're going to get noticed, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, like you said, we've probably played with a lot of these people and we don't even know it, or against them or whatever, you never know who's got the face on the other side of the username or the gamer tag or whatever. So they're probably out there playing. Like, I mean, the NHL community especially, it's not a big group of people that play that game. Like, we were talking about it the other day. If like the people in our league, everyone talks about like certain leagues as being like the best in quotes, but the same people that are in these quote best leagues are playing the same people that are playing in the leagues that we're in and the other leagues. I mean, it's all the same player pool because that's who plays the game. It's not a huge, massive group of people.
Right. And like, how many times do we match up with somebody and we're like, oh, we know these guys are sweats.
Yep.
Like, be ready, be super focused this game because we know we've ran into
Oh
them.
yeah.
And those are probably, the guys that we're talking about, right?
Yep.
That need to notice us. And so anytime you face somebody, don't go half-assed. Don't take it for granted. Don't go into a game thinking it's going to be cake because you want to impress them. And what I do, even if like I don't like the guy, if they're like on my friends list or I think they played really, really well, I like to send a GG in a message.
Yeah.
Or if it is like you're playing Black Goose. What up, Black Goose, if you're listening? Black Goose, we were playing him earlier. He gets angry sometimes. We were talking about it. And I still sent him a good game. And you know what? He did send me a good mother effing game back.
Yeah.
So be respectful. And I think the cream will rise to the top always. Okay. But what's going to hinder you from rising to the top is how you treat people and how you act around people. And if you have the skill and the talent, you can get noticed, but don't ruin the moment or the opportunity by being a jackass.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's what's going to get you on a team. Like if you've got the skill, all right, then be a decent human being, be a good competitor, be a good sport, as we said earlier.
Yeah.
That's how you get on those teams. So
makes sense.
So real quick, I just want to go over some money things and then we'll kind of go with our closing thoughts.
All right.
So money in esports. Can you bring up that LA Business Journal article that I sent you? I don't know if you can.
Yeah, it's right. This one. Yeah, here we go.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. So esports is a form of organized competition between individual players or teams using video games. According to Statista, a market research and analysis platform, 532 million people regularly viewed esports competitions last year. Jeez. That viewership is expected to grow to more than 640 million by 2025. Last year, the global esports market was valued at just over 1.4 billion, and it's forecast to grow as much as 1.9 billion in 2025.
Like grow is like an additional 1.9 billion, or grow two?
It's a two as much.
Yeah.
They expect it to be at 1.9. In 2021, the largest share of esports market revenue came from sponsorships and advertising. In total, global esports revenue from sponsorships and advertising reached $641 million. So that's what we were kind of talking about. Like there was a lot of, especially during COVID, there was a lot of capital coming in from a lot of these sponsors and stuff like that. We're starting to see that go down. So that number next year will probably be down. According to data from Nielsen, the U.S. advertising marketplace shrank by 7% in the second quarter of last year versus the same time in 2021. So that's exactly what I was talking about.
Mhm.
went down 7%, that's actually a really large number when we're talking about this kind of money.
Yeah.
Leaving several industries, including esports, with less income from advertisers. Esports rose to widespread popularity during the pandemic. The resumption of in-person events could be seen as huge impediment to the growth and stability of esports industry, but some analysis say otherwise, opinioning that the decline in investment and sponsorships has more to do with the economic climate. So they're saying it's not because of these companies going out of business. They're just saying these companies are going out of business because the economy's shit right now, basically.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, some of the sponsors are beginning to move away from esports because they see that the customer interest is on the wane, at least for the moment. Whether it's a temporary trend or not remains to be seen, he said. Grief said that this period embodies the survival of the fittest paradigm. He anticipates the decline in sponsors and advertisements could result in company mergers and speculates that companies that fail to raise capital or generate revenue will end up closing their doors. So kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So we're talking about a lot of money. Did you know a city that hosts one of these championships is usually about $100 million boost in revenue for that city?
I mean, it makes sense with all the extra people coming to the area to watch it, to participate in it, and everything else that goes along with that.
Yep. I mean, it's kind of like a Comic-Con,
Yeah,
right?
or like the Olympics or Comic-Con or any
Yeah.
big event like that. Yeah.
I mean, I know it's saying it's on the decline, but I truly believe, I mean, maybe the capital is on a decline, but the business itself is not even at its peak yet. And I think
Mhm.
we're right in the beginnings of seeing this big transformation in what sports in the world truly is. And you're starting to see a lot more of these athletic sports kind of go away. Like I said, wrestling wasn't in the Olympics anymore. I think
Uh-huh.
they took MLB out of the Olympics. And you're seeing a lot more mental competitions kind of come up. I mean, I couldn't tell you like how popular chess is right now. It's
Yeah.
becoming very, very big again, and that's
There's
because of
YouTubers that are all
Magnus.
about it.
Yeah, man. We've got this guy, Magnus, I forget his last name. That is just like he's the smartest guy when it comes to chess. Like he just does not lose. I think he's lost just a handful of times in his life. And he's just a genius. And it when you have somebody that good, like a Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan,
Mhm.
who's gonna be the esports guy? Because there's gonna be somebody that is going to just start breaking records. And honestly, like the best way to explain it is going to raise the bar, right?
Yeah.
And is going to be the next standard, the upgraded standard. And then people will compete up to that. And then somebody new will come, whether it's LeBron James or, Steph Curry, whoever that next person is. And that, to me, is what defines it being a sport.
Mhm.
That competition is what defines it being a sport. Like being able to set a new bar, being able to set standards and set expectations for the profession. Because I mean, you can pay people to play video games, but what's the point if everybody's on the same level and nobody
Yeah.
shines? You never
Uh-huh.
get that, right? You never get
Yeah.
that star, that spark that explodes the sport. And it's
Mhm.
happened in almost every sport. Baseball, who was it? Come on, this one's
Babe
easy.
Ruth.
Yep, 100%, right?
There's
Everybody
Caitlin
knows.
Clark now with the WNBA. Like, I mean, it's happening all over in all sports, different
Tennis.
times.
Tennis, who is it?
Talking like women's, like the Venus sisters, or
Okay.
Serena and Venus, or Djokovic,
Fedorov,
or Fedorov, or
Djokovic,
like all those guys, all getting older now. But
Agassi.
Agassi, yeah,
Like
all those
they've
guys.
all had every generation has had the guy, the
Yep.
guy that changed the sport. And that's what made those sports phenomenal and popular.
Yep.
It's what brought eyes to it. And I guess that's what we're kind of waiting on. I mean, we've had like little glimmers here. I remember Halo 2, T squared. You ever hear that name? T squared?
Sounds familiar, yeah.
He's a big Halo professional gamer. He was the best Halo gamer on the planet. Like, I remember that, but like I said, I just asked you, and it sounds familiar, but you really don't remember. Like,
Yeah.
the reason I remember is because I was in tournaments and I wanted to beat that kid. I wanted
Yeah.
to play him and I wanted to beat him. Like, that's
Uh-huh.
what got me so passionate about
Yeah.
getting involved with it, right? And getting better
Mhm.
at it. So let me ask you, do you think esports should be considered a sport? And what are your thoughts on some of the stuff we went over today?
I think that, I mean, it's had some of those moments, like you said, here and there, like that fighting game competition we talked about earlier. But I think I agree with you a little bit where you're talking about how it's kind of just at the start, because I feel like it's just kind of in the last few years really been openly accepted more and more as a sport, or as not even just a sport, but as something that people can travel to other countries and participate in these tournaments and these things, and you can actually have a chance to have those kinds of moments. And I think that it's right at the beginning, and I feel like the next 5 to 10 years will kind of be what everyone will look back at in the future and say this is kind of where it solidified as either a sport or not a sport, based on if those people, if those players, if those moments happen or if they don't happen. And if we get these new players coming up and doing that or not. You know, maybe I should play nothing but NHL the next game it comes out, and maybe I'll try to do it. Who knows? But there's people out there that can do it. It's just if they're going to have the determination to focus on that game or that whatever it is they want to play and just do it, because we've seen some moments, and I think that there are a lot of big moments coming up, and I'm excited to see what happens. Like we were saying, the Evo tournament with fighting games, and you know, they've got these big major tournaments multiple times a year throughout the year that some pretty cool stuff happens during if you actually watch them. But I don't think as many people watched them in the past, but I feel like it's becoming more and more popular in recent years. And I think it's just going to kind of continue getting more and more popular as time goes forward.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I guess like my last thought would be, even though the opportunities are out there, and you know, it's a lot easier to become a professional gamer today than it was, 20 years ago or 30 years ago when I was a young buck.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing I would say, the successful baseball players, the successful football players, the successful hockey players, the successful tennis players, one thing that they all have in common is they love doing what they do.
Yeah.
And if you're a gamer, that should be your number one priority. Are you enjoying it? And if you're enjoying it, then have fun with it. And if you decide to commit the time, commit the money, sacrifice, certain things to make sure you hone your skills to be as good as you can possibly be, and you get recognized, don't mess it up. Like, those chances aren't going to come, but probably once in a lifetime. And what I will say is, who you are as a human being will determine on how that opportunity works out for you. So if you want to be a professional gamer, be who you want to see setting that standard when you watch those tournaments and you watch those championships. Be a professional. And yeah, that means getting up early and practicing. That means eating healthy. That means doing something other than video games to make sure your mental health is good. Make sure your family time is met. Make sure your time with your friends is met outside of video games. It's great that the opportunities are there, but ultimately, we all can't get there. And if you have that dream that's great. If you have the skill, that's even better. But bottom line, we all should be gaming to have fun, make some friends, have a good time, release some stress. It's not about being a professional gamer. Esports is something really cool, and I think is going to expand into a bigger venue. And at some point, I think in the future, we're going to be able to watch all these championships through a VR headset or through our Xbox or PC, and it'll look like we're sitting in the stands, but really we're at home watching it on a screen. Like that's where it's going. And I always think of, you ever play Final Fantasy X, Froggy?
I believe so. It's been a while.
Do you remember Blitzball?
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
It was like underwater mini game. You had this ball.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember the auditorium of that Blitzball game.
Uh-huh.
I would love to see games come out with an auditorium for people to spectate these games people are playing. That would be really cool. And that would be the
cool.
next level for some of these competitions and game developers. If they want to start gearing towards it being a sport, they need to have a stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And what's better to create a stadium than a virtual world, man?
Yeah.
So that's my thoughts. I like where it's going. I would like to see more from it, and I would like to see a standard set by, these professional athletes that makes the gaming community proud.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my last thought. We want to give out one plug today from our good friends, Scott and David. They are with Dudes on Movies. They do a podcast. Basically, they watch a movie and they review it and they go over it. And here we go. Froggy's got it up on YouTube if you want to take a look. It's basically, I'm just going to read this off, so it's coming from their words, not mine. It's your go-to podcast for all things cinema. Join hosts Scott and Dave, passionate film enthusiasts, as they dive into a vast world of movies with a fresh and entertaining perspective. Each episode features lively discussions, humorous banter, and insightful reviews of films spanning various genres and eras. Whether it's dissecting a classic masterpiece or exploring the latest blockbuster, these dudes bring their genuine love for movies to every episode. Tune in for engaging conversations, candid opinions, and a cinematic journey that both entertaining and informative. If you're a movie buff or just love a good film chat, Dudes on Movies is perfect podcast for you, for your listening pleasure. And just so you know, these guys are really, really hilarious. Scott's a good friend of mine, and they do a really great job. They've been doing it for a while. They got over 200 shows. And they're just some really good guys, and it's a very, very entertaining podcast. They basically just talk about the movie, but they kind of bring in their own opinions. Sometimes they talk about how bad the movie is and how bad the cinema part is. And they also get into, some of the serious stuff. But go take a listen to it. It's Dudes on Movies. They're on all platforms right now. The only one they're not on right now is YouTube. So please go check them out. They also do have a website. It's dudesonmovies.com. All right, that is it for this episode of Essence of Gaming. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. Please share the podcast with all your friends. We're still trying to boost our listenership up, but we greatly appreciate your time. And don't forget, go reply to those questions. We want to know what you hear. We want to know what you think about our podcast. But that is all for us today. Be good out there and game on. Thank you again for listening to this edition of Essence of Gaming. I'm Tribal Gamer. That's TRYBAL. Check me out on Facebook. Also go check out Frogman's streaming site on Twitch, Silver Gecko Gaming. That's SYLVIR
Gecko Gaming. We are also on other platforms, and our podcast is on Spotify and YouTube with video. Please email us your feedback at eofgpodcast@gmail.com. That's eofgpodcast@gmail.com. We appreciate your support. Have fun.